have to be careful not to give a person a thing that's actually harming them. Same is true for advice and wisdom that you give. Make sure that the wisdom and advice that you do give people is something that really is helping them. And by the way, it's much better to say, I can't give advice, man, I don't know anything. That's much better than saying, you know what, just do what makes you happy. Because what makes us happy is the very thing that leads us headlong into harm most times. If someone comes to you for advice, make sure that you're giving them the food, rent, and clothing of advice. In other words, things that actually are helpful. And too often today, we confuse the mind and the heart. And I mean, the heart, I don't know what your experience is, but I find that oftentimes the heart is just desperately wicked. I don't know who among us can know the things that are in there because we're afraid oftentimes to delve into our own hearts, much less the hearts of other people. I would never allow so much evil. Yeah, but you do in your own life. And then of course we have lots of excuses. Well, that's because I don't have any control over this or that. No, you have way more control over your life, which is really uncomfortable for us. You have control over your life about whether or not you tell the truth. Do you always tell the truth? Or do you fudge it? Well, you can't just be blunt with everybody. Why not? Is it not the right thing to do? Well, then people won't like you. Is that your job in life? Is that what you've been tasked with, to be liked? Or have you been tasked with being a good person? Have you been tasked with doing good? No matter what it costs. Because as soon as you start making those calculations, evil is right around the corner, man. And one thing I can tell you about evil is that it stalks you, man, and is looking to devour you. Wisdom. If you have some wisdom to share, that might be a good thing to share with people. But you should probably not give advice unless you're asked for it. But if people do ask you for advice, don't withhold that from them. It's like if somebody asks you for food and clothing and that, maybe you shouldn't withhold it from them because it's something that they actually need. If a person comes and they ask you for those things, they must really need it, because we don't usually like to ask people for those things. It's almost it's a matter of pride or embarrassment for us if we have to ask for those things. It's probably true for wisdom as well. If you have to go to a person and ask for wisdom, ask for advice, you're probably in a pretty bad way. And so make sure that the thing that you give them really is helpful. Again, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, can you give me help? And your immediate reaction is, sure, here's some drugs. Not helpful. If the person asks you for help, sure, what do you need? Oh, I need food. And if it's a good thing and it's actually helping, then yeah, you give the person the thing that's actually helping them. You have to be careful not to give a person a thing that's actually harming them. Same is true for advice and wisdom that you give. Make sure that the wisdom and advice that you do give people is something that really is helping them. And by the way, it's much better to say, I can't give advice, man, I don't know anything. That's much better than saying, you know what, just do what makes you happy. Because what makes us happy is the very thing that leads us headlong into harm most times. And that's just that's a cop-out. Someone comes to you for advice, don't just, make sure that what you give them is, make sure that you're giving them the food and rent and clothing of advice. In other words, things that actually are helpful. Good. What about evil? What are some things that we think of as being evil? Yeah.
Being selfish.
Being selfish, okay. Rebellion, how do you mean that? Rebellion, which is probably the heart of a lot of evil. I'm going to go back real quick to the selfish thing. What would be an example of being selfish? Not sharing our drugs? No, not sharing our food, clothing, wisdom. Yeah, you're going to say?
Yeah, keeping all of that to yourself, not being generous with your food, clothing.
Yeah, probably whatever we would put over here as being good, the absence of goodness would therefore be evil. Yeah.
I think part of being selfish is not caring about others, not having empathy.
And that's probably the heart of it. You've got the heart of it. there's empathy, there's a lack of empathy, which is probably the heart of a lot of evil. I think you're also going to find that it is this lack of wisdom as well, which is why wisdom is so important. Because if you don't have empathy, you're not going to care enough about a person, their grumbling stomach, to give them food. If you don't have wisdom, then you don't know what's good for people. And so you can't really give what's good unless you know what good is. And so you have to have wisdom first, and then you also have to have empathy. And be sure that your empathy does not be sure that your empathy does not cloud your wisdom. That's very difficult, because sometimes you can just feel so bad for people that everything else goes out the window. Like, I was just talking to a class last period. During my prep period, I go and I watch other teachers teach, and sometimes they'll ask me to talk to their classes and say a little something, which from me, it's never just a short little something, because I'm me. I was talking to a class last period, and somebody brought up what was happening over in Israel right now, because pretty much what this person knew is just whatever comes across their story in Instagram. People will share things like hospital was blown up and 500 people were killed, and Israel did this, and babies are dying, and it's all terrible. And I asked the person because they mentioned this hospital. And I asked them when they heard about this. They said that they heard about it last week. And I asked them, did you know that it turned out to not be true? It didn't actually hit a hospital. It was a Hamas rocket that hit the parking lot of a hospital. 500 people were not killed. It was a fake story. And this person was like, that's not true. I said, yeah, look it up. And she, in real time, she said that she looked up and she's like, oh, what the hell? I go, right? Because in her mind, it's like, I'm going to help because I have to spread word. I have to spread the word about this. People have to know about this. So the whole thing was debunked over a week ago. It was over a week ago. And she was sharing it on her story 2 days ago, she said. I'm like, well, were you really helping? Like you had this outpouring of empathy, like, oh my God, people are dying, this is terrible. So there's an empathy that's there, sure. And her heart may have been in the right place, but her mind wasn't. And too often today, we confuse the mind and the heart. And the heart, I don't know what your experience is, but I find that oftentimes the heart is just desperately wicked. I don't know who among us can know the things that are in there, because we're afraid oftentimes to delve into our own hearts, much less the hearts of other people. Now, if she came across my timeline, on my story, I saw that, I could have thought, oh my God, she's a horrible, wicked person. She's intentionally sharing misinformation. She knows that she's lying. This was something that didn't happen, and she's defaming a whole people for this. Or I could look at it and say, well, you don't know what you don't know. And which of those two things seems to correspond to reality more? Well, wisdom tells me that most people don't wake up in the morning and decide to be evil. Most people wake up in the morning and they decide. Well, they don't even decide, they just go about their days. And sometimes the things that we do are good, and sometimes the things that we do are evil. And unfortunately, a lot of what we do is just chance like that. We follow our hearts, and we're told today, more than ever, follow your hearts. Just do what your heart tells you. If it's true that our hearts are desperately wicked, then maybe it's not such a good idea to follow our hearts. Maybe it's a good idea to be wise about it, to be able to search ourselves and know ourselves, and thereby know other people as well. Yeah.
So all the evil that we do, it comes from just leaning on our own understanding?
Generally, yeah. Yeah. This is also a huge problem. We lean on our own understanding. How much understanding do we have? I love you, but understand where I come from when I say this. How much understanding do you really have at 15 and 16 years old? Hell, how much understanding do I have at 41? It's way more than you guys do, and I'll tell you what, I don't even know shit about fuck. It's pretty rare to come across something that I'm particularly knowledgeable about. And so what do? Well, you lean on the understanding of other people who've demonstrated that they have wisdom, people who've demonstrated that they have some bit of knowledge. We have this tendency to dismiss everything that existed before our time and say, well, things are different now. Yeah, things, but not people. There's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing that's changed. The human condition hasn't changed. We're still the same. All that we can do now is expose ourselves more. It wasn't that we didn't have ideas before, it's just that now we can spread them much faster. And unfortunately, the ideas that we spread, we get married to because there's a digital record of it. The things that you think when you're 18 years old are going to follow, the things that you think at 18 and you send out onto the internet are going to follow you around for the rest of your life, unfortunately. And people will look at you and say, how can you say X, when you're like 35 years old? Back when you were 18, you said Y. A lot of time has changed. Oh, so you're wishy-washy. You change your positions. Well, yeah, every intelligent person does. But we talked about like it's such a terrible thing. Because, what's happened is that you've changed because your heart has changed. You're more selfish than you used to be. No, you're more thoughtful. You're more thoughtful, hopefully. And so it's a very dangerous thing to lean on our own understanding. We have to seek wisdom from other places because that's how we become wise. We learn how to walk by watching people walk. We learn how to ride a bike by watching other people ride bikes and getting helped. And then we develop wisdom because we interact with wise people. Who are the wise people in your life? I would ask you that. I don't mean who are the people you like. I don't mean who are the people who you think are smart, because smart and wise, two very different things, man. Like I said, I've got more degrees than most people have letters in their names. I have a PhD, and I'm a fucking idiot. But I know a lot. But wisdom, I am not a role model. Couldn't help you with that. You gotta find somebody who you see has actual wisdom. And that's how you learn from that person. Find a mentor. Don't let it be a superhero. Don't let it be a comic book hero. Because that world is very black and white. Sometimes literally. But it's certainly colors within the lines. Life is not like that. We blame this idea of a God for all this evil, and we say, well, if there's so much evil, why would a God allow so much evil? Here's a better question. Why do you? A person who asks that question, well, if I was God, I wouldn't allow. Bullshit. I can look in your own life and see where you probably allow evil all over the place. You probably do a lot of the evil. And again, not even by doing it, but just by an absence of goodness in our lives. Remember, evil is not necessarily something that you do, it's something that you omit. You refuse to help others. Why? Because a lack of empathy or because of selfishness. So it's good to help, it's evil to not help. It's good to share, maybe. It's evil not to share. It's good to tell the truth. What's a lie? A lie is an absence of the truth. Goodness is truth. Evil is the absence of truth. It's therefore lying. So it's something that we act. It's a perversion of what is and what should be. And so when we say things like, "Well, I don't believe in this God because I would never allow so much evil." Yeah, but you do in your own life. And then, of course, we have lots of excuses. Well, that's because I don't have any control over this or that. No, you have way more control over your life, which is really uncomfortable for us. You have control over your life about whether or not you tell the truth. Do you always tell the truth? Or do you fudge it? Well, you can't just be blunt with everybody. Why not? Is it not the right thing to do? Well, then people won't like you. Is that your job in life? Is that what you've been tasked with, to be liked? Or have you been tasked with being a good person? Have you been tasked with doing good? No matter what it costs. Because as soon as you start making those calculations, evil is right around the corner, man. And one thing I can tell you about evil is that it stalks you, man, and is looking to devour you. It's waiting for an opportunity because our souls lean towards that. If we lean towards our own understanding, that's what we're leaning towards. We're leaning towards that lion that's seeking who's going to devour. It's evil. That's what it is. And we're so sure of ourselves. And that's another thing, pride. If I would never allow that to happen. One of the best things that can happen to us to understand our parents is, I've been told anyway, to become parents ourselves. That's when all of that stuff that was so clear to us when we were younger becomes so differently clear to us when we're older. So if there's a God, where does so much evil come from? Here's a better question. If there's no God, where does any good come from? Why would we do any good? Why would you not steal? Why would you not lie? Why would you not cheat? That's a better question. Why do any of us do anything good at all? It's not our nature. It certainly isn't our nature. We have to learn to not be evil. And so we need to get our questions correct, get our minds right, find some place where we can lean our true understanding on to gain wisdom. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yeah, I like that too.